And the National Freedom Party says the life esidimeni psychiatric patients' deaths could have been avoided. Speaking in Parliament, NFP MP Sheikh says national and provincial oversight committees should have fought harder to prevent the patients' transfer. Mr. Sheikh says political parties should not finger point and pass the blame, but to rather ensure justice is done. And on the debate, as always, we invite you at home on 011-542-2186. We're also joined by Mr. Motsoaledi. He is with the South African Liberty Foundation as the chairperson, and also with Mosiria Attorneys. Siso Mahlango is our resident political analyst. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. Now we're on 102 deaths and counting, and yet the accountability seems to be more being passed on to either subordinates, or we don't even know what's going to happen. Yes, the recommendations by the health ombuds have been taken on seriously, but what is your view, or how should the health department be handling this matter?
Well, frankly, if you look at the Ombudsman report, it tries to illustrate the manner in which negligence has happened. And particularly, you've got the report that goes to say and shows that there was consultation, or rather a report that were given by the Society of Psychiatric or Mental Health Patients. You've got various NGOs, not NGO particularly, but trained personnel that gave a report to the MEC at Gauteng to say, attend to this, attend to that. Now, when you look at it legally, you'd say that once there has been a negligence at that level, you will have what we can consider a criminal charge that can ensue thereof in the name of culpable homicide. That is a possible charge that is there. But by and large, you also would say that why is the Premier not responsible in large? Because these reports, you can't have a situation where you say that the head of the department or the head of state in Gauteng did not know about this problem. It has been one will say that the Premier would on regular basis meet with his various departments. They'll give him report the status quo or the standing affairs of that province. Now, you would expect that there has to be accountability. Somebody has to take responsibility.
And Mosere, the whole thing is that now we're working on this document by the health ombuds, which is very meticulously done, but essentially implicates three individuals, that of being the HOD of the department, the MEC, who subsequently resigned, and another senior executive. But it doesn't necessarily extend to the political principles. So should the department on its own accord say, look, we are willing to either step down, or are they likely to just pay lip service to accountability?
Well, good evening, Cindy. It would be very unfortunate if the department would only pay lip service, particularly when so many lives were lost and lives continue to perish. I think my concern is the families that remain behind. When I pass, and perhaps I am still unbeknownst to where I am, but those that remain suffer that pain forever. Sometimes they may not get the answers they deserve. The problem I have with the administration of this case is that the challenge and repercussion seems to trickle down rather than go up. I'm reminded of a time when even the Premier, Mr. Makura, said President Zuma must do the right thing, and he knows what that is. I appeal also to the Premier to do the right thing, and he knows what that is. It shouldn't trickle down to say, let's get rid of the MEC. Uqedani Mahlangu has already resigned. Let's get rid of the directors who have already left. After the directors, the deputy directors. After the deputy we'll have a flow until we have to remove the clerk. But who deals with Dr. Aaron? You know, who deals with the Premier? And the Premier cannot say to the country, I did not know. Because when those marches, when those protests were happening, of those families demanding to know where their loved ones
various
were,
court cases,
you know, the various court cases, what did the Premier think he was dealing with? Didn't he have record? Didn't his office identify these things? So at the end, the Premier cannot come and exonerate himself and say, I did not know that this was happening. And then he wants to fire people. If the axe has to fall, then it has to fall also from the top.
Minister Motsoaledi spoke about processes being flouted in the sense that some patients were even collected by NGOs. He has no idea as to how permission was even granted, because there are certain criteria that has to be applied before patients are transferred. So seemingly there is either miscommunication, misrepresentation, somebody's not telling the truth, and that person obviously hasn't raised their hand to say they're culpable.
Yes. This is what we could say madness, administrative madness at its best. We can't ignore this and really say that the province in large, from its top or from its premiership, is not aware of this crisis that's there. We're not just talking about 2 lives, 3 lives, we're talking more than 100 lives that are at stake, that also continued to be there, that continued to be lost, even after you have had the MEC resigned. So this crisis continued. It's a national crisis, and somebody has to take responsibility. And I'm to say that from the head, from the premier, there must be accountability. There has to be that says that leadership must ensue in that and say, as Gauteng, we were responsible for this. And not only must it stuck there that you have people resign, but we cannot always tolerate instances like this where death are caused and people just resign and that's the end thereof. Criminal charges has to be pursued in this, and I would say that the NPA should pursue criminal charges to the latter. There has to be accountability to the latter in here.
Yeah, I mean, there are various interventions when it comes to legislation, in the sense there's the Health Act, the Mental Health Act, and the National Act in general of how to look after patients. But the most vulnerable, who should be gradually and systematically transferred to get it familiar with their environment, because you don't even know the extent of their condition before you just willy-nilly transfer them. So, I mean, one fails to understand how we even got here in the first place. If you know what your obligations are as the erstwhile MEC, I don't know if she's even left the country, most probably, but still, today we heard how Minister is just, again, emphatically saying we'll go with the report, we won't question the ombuds, we'll visit the families, they want closure, we've done a bit. Does it sound convincing to you?
I don't think I'm convinced. In the first place, didn't Mr. Dani Mahlangu visit those NGOs and see what was happening there? Because the Health Ombudsman's report, I listened to the press statement by the Health Ombudsman, and he was saying that some of these people didn't have food, you know, and were very dehydrated. There was not even water there. That's very inhumane. However, one must also ask that in esidimeni, even after these patients had left and went to different NGOs, people continued to die at esidimeni. So the problem is not just the administration or the process, and not just to those NGOs, although I really believe that those NGOs must be dealt with. But to attempt to deal with only the staff or the staff of the Department of Health as if they were in error, when even at esidimeni people continued to die even after these 94 patients had left. I think the investigation should also be extended to esidimeni life to say what is happening there. Why were those people released in the first place? What is the documentation behind it? And if the people who are still within esidimeni as we speak are taken care of, lest we, seek indulgence in the NGOs and forsake esidimeni, to which I also believe a major problem is brewing.
Let's get a reflection from Dr. Gwen Ramokgopa. She is the Gauteng MEC for Health. Dr. Ramokgopa, thanks so much for joining us. Of course, you have been here before, and the perennial problems continue, especially in the Gauteng Department of Health. You have your work cut out for you. And just with the presentation from Minister of Health, Dr. Motsoaledi, there doesn't seem to be any concrete, tangible work that is being done besides instituting an inquest. There's very little comfort for the 102 lives that have been lost.
My apologies. By the way, I'm speaking to?
At Cindy Mabi,
Oh,
Ramakgopa.
Cindy, okay. Thank you very much, Cindy, and also greetings to others. I'm just coming in cold, but my understanding is that even before the health ombuds released the report, there has been interventions. I think there is one NGO that was closed during the investigations, and also the Ministerial Advisory Committee on Mental Health, as they were checking the well-being of patients moving from one NGO to the other. They also referred a number of patients to public hospitals, and immediately after the Health Ombuds report came out, there has been a team of 60 specialists who make sure that they go to all the NGOs within a period of 3 days, assess the well-being of patients, assess the facilities, with a main objective of prioritizing those that are ill that needs to be referred, prioritizing where there are no there's no adequate well-being of patients, like food and all that, and also prioritizing those NGOs that needed to close immediately, and also those and to plan for referring the patients to better facilities. These experts, they've also gone to facilities, receiving facilities for NGOs that need to be closed in the best interest of patients. And that is why we are ready to start the move with the support of the specialists as well as the consent of families and guardians of patients.
Dr. Ramakgopa, but you know, the initial rationale of cancelling the Life Esidimeni contract was based on inadequate resources and funding. We heard the Minister of Health today clarifying that it had nothing to do with money, also suggesting that there is levels of criminality, that NGOs had access to patients, and at this stage we do not know who will take the blame squarely and fully. The families deserve more than an apology, they require action.
Cindy, where I am, I also don't as yet fully comprehend why things have gone so grossly wrong. Because the guidelines, the Mental Health Act and the guidelines prescribe for anyone that, for any Department of Health that sets out to implement the policy of deinstitutionalization, that you assess the patient, you assess the receiving facility, you ensure that there are adequate health support professionals, rehabilitation, the patients are not kept as if they are prisoners, and all that, before you even start. And when we looked at the program or the plan that was presented even to court, that plan was there, but the implementation violated all the norms, standards, and practices that can be acceptable and understood. So where I am still interviewing and investigating as to what lessons can we take, what could have gone so grossly wrong. So that is the issue. But the issue of the institutional and referral of patients, that's what we do every time. Patients are referred from one facility to the other. There are basics, there are ethics that have to be followed. So we must, I agree with the families, we mustn't just say apology, we mustn't just say closure, we must understand why things have gone so wrong and make sure that it never happens again.
Dr. Ramakgopa, will the investigations also, I beg your pardon,
unprecedented.
Yes, yes. Is it your view that the investigations need to extend also to the parliamentary oversight committees represented by parliamentarians or cabinet to ensure that, you know, there are no loopholes and we're not just using this as a political football?
Yeah. Look, today at the legislature, I was also debating as well. I was also debating, and what I said even yesterday at the press conference was that we as South Africans, we shouldn't make this a political football. We must actually understand why is it that even our constitution, having entrenched the rights of these patients, the National Health Act, the National Health Mental Act, the Public Service Act, and so forth and so forth and so forth. What could have been done differently? And why, when we listened to the families, how they really protested, petitioned, even went to court, supported by at least Section 27. May have been others.
All right,
Why
Dr.
their voices
Ramokgopa,
could not be heard.
Yes,
So we
your
need
line
to
is very
review that.
bad. I'm so sorry, but thanks so much for making time for us. That's Dr. Gwen
Thank you
Ramokgopa.
very
She
much,
is the
Cindy.
Gauteng MEC for Health. And gentlemen, just in closing, you know, the ANC would have to pull a magic wand, I suppose, in dealing with this particular matter. It's very glaring. And if in the department, if there's no resignation or something more meaningful that you know, that will take the confidence of South Africans, then it's going to be problematic going forward. But I just want to take Anonymous quickly. Hello, thanks for calling us in the neck of time. Anonymous, good evening to you.
Hi, Cindy.
Hi.
Cindy, you know, I had a family there at esidimeni, and we visited some of these NGOs, and I don't know why we're calling them NGOs. They were just created, I think, as a business. I visited one of these NGOs and I asked the lady what was her background, and she said she comes from the National Prosecuting Authority, and this was the one at Orchards. And looking at the patients there, I took some clothing, I gave some money for one of the patients, and the conditions were very, very poor. You know, they were living on a double story with men just walking around with nothing to do. I visited Cullinan too, with the minister myself. I've seen some houses there that were being converted into supposed to be an NGO, but there was hardly any beds or anything. They were just, you know, on the go, creating items and moving people there. But I'm actually surprised that at Cullinan people died there, because there's a hospital right next to where this place was created. I actually walked into that facility.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why I got there is that we were concerned, you know, when we had meetings with the MEC, there were public meetings at esidimeni, and what happened is she said, okay, you know, whoever wants to join the delegation, they could come along. But obviously, hundreds of parents didn't have cars or didn't have the...
Yeah, Anonymous, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but can you just please email us assignment@ann7.com, assignment@ann7.com with more details. I have to take other callers.
Yeah,
and
yeah. Look, if your people can phone me, I've got a lot of details. I'll be very honest with you. I've visited a lot of these.
Yeah, we'll hand you back to our producer. Just please stay on the line and give them your details. Thanks again for sharing, and we're sorry for your loss.
Yeah, okay.
Nelly, hello to you. Good evening.
Hello, Cindy. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Fine, Cindy. No, I was a little bit disturbed because the Dr. Gwen Ramokgopa was cut off, maybe due to network problems and all that. But my question is, what was the reason behind moving the people from esidimeni to those NGOs, knowing fully well that these were not NGOs, as the last caller has just stated? What was the reason behind? She was talking about ethics. Where were those ethics when these people were removed? Why it was taken as if they were not human beings? Where were those ethics when the people were removed? Where was something that was written down? Where was the chief medical officer of that department?
Yeah.
Where is the superintendent general of health in Gauteng? Was the minister not aware?
Yeah.
Dan Matango was not aware. Even David Makura, the premier. Why? I think to make things right, the President of the Republic, Honorable State President Zuma, must go to those families himself. He must not send people, no delegations. He must go there and make the people feel that they are relatives. they were being taken care of. There's respect. And also Dr. Gunma Rabambukum must be aware that those ethics were ignored, surely.
Melika, I mean, it's something that is a complete blemish, and it's so unfortunate. It's the last thing that South Africa needed. And as you're saying, that the healing process needs to start in earnest for the families, and the vertical process of investigating and ensuring that those responsible are held accountable. But we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much, gentlemen, for your time. And thanks for you at home for calling as well. We'll take a look at the latest weather update. We're back after this.